What's going on, everyone? Today I want to go over gacha games as a whole and if they're all falling off. Are gacha games and specifically HoYoverse games dying? Are they all just collectively horrible? So I want to talk about all this in today's video. Now, when we look at every mainline HoYoverse game as of fall 2025, they all seem to be problematic in some way, shape, or form. Some people say that some of them are more generous than others, but the point is they all have features that many people are not happy with. For example, Honkai Star Rail with 3.7, players are calling the game and the company and the developers greedy. Genshin Impact, I don't know why people glaze, but they do, but nonetheless people are complaining about the power creep that has been going around lately in the game, along with shilling of newer units and a lot more emphasis on team builds now as opposed to earlier on in the game's lifespan. You also have Honkai Impact, which a lot of people are still mixed about part 2 almost 2 years after the release, and all of these HoYo games people just generally have complaints about. Even Zone Zero has power creep. There are some crazy monetization tactics that they are taking from Honkai Star Rail, and I want to talk, right? Are gacha games falling off in this sense? No. Let me just explain, right? We have a lot of HoYoverse games and gacha games to play. There's Wuthering Waves as well, which I won't talk about because I don't play WoW. I never have played it. I've seen a lot of people lately just up and quitting HoYoverse games entirely because they're all bad. When I feel like in reality, there's more than just HoYoverse is falling apart, all their games are bad, and all this kind of stuff. So the thing is, right? There's an oversaturation of gacha games in the market right now. What I mean by this is think back to 2020, 2021, 2022. The only mainline gacha game at the time was Genshin Impact. You had old era gacha games like Honkai Impact 3rd, Arc Knights, FGO, Azure Lane, and these games were popular, borderline mainstream, but they were never to the popularity that Genshin was. Not even close. Then Honkai Star Rail came out, then we had Wuthering Waves, then Zenless Zone Zero, Tower Fantasy came out around that time. So many other gachas are popping up now too. There's Arcnight's Enfield on the horizon. Duet Night Abyss just came out. There's so many AAA or borderline AAA gacha games to play, and so many people are finding it harder and harder to balance out all of these gacha games. But here is the thing, in my opinion at least, that leads to nowhere. Now, there are a lot of gacha games to play, but so many people have taken up the role of playing all of them. And what this means is you have to keep up with all the content in Honkai Star Rail. And then 2 weeks later, an update for Genshin. 2 weeks later, an update for Zenless. There's a WoW update somewhere around there too. And we're seeing a lot of people in this general gacha community with burnout and fatigue for specific games while they allocate more time for other gacha games. And at the same time, what I have not seen a single person talk about is how standards for what is considered good for a gacha is going up, and it's going up fast. Back in late 2023, a free 5-star for a mainline gacha game was considered a lot. That was considered as good as it can get. Now, this fall, we got almost back-to-back free 5-stars, and seemingly nobody cares. Nobody is praising the game at all. It's become the standard, the norm. Whatever good that HoYoverse does with their games gets completely overshadowed by the media by whatever is bad in the game, whether it's something trivial or not. And I think it gets to a point where, are these gacha games bad? No, but I think a lot of it is a mentality issue. A lot of people are just trying to balance out so many gacha games, and you're forcing yourself to play a gacha game that you just don't find that fun. I've seen so many people in the Honkai Star Rail community, and I'm not going to talk about the greed or the 3.7 stuff this topic, I already talked about that in a live stream, but I've seen so many people ignoring all that, are just saying that the game is not fun anymore. They're not finding the game enjoyable, they're not finding the end game enjoyable. The story, these people are saying, is getting too long for them. My only advice would be to just up and quit the game. I'm not saying that out of spite or to be passive aggressive. I think the best course of action is to just quit. I've done this with plenty of gacha games before. I did this with Genshin Impact years ago. I didn't like the game. I thought the quality of life and the rewards that they gave to the player base were extremely lacking. And this was around 3.0, maybe near the end of 2.x. This is when I just up and quit the game for good, and I haven't came back for good ever since. If I log on my Genshin Impact account, you're gonna see so much overcapped resin, and it will never get spent. Now, I could have taken up the role of continuously complaining until they inevitably did start adding more quality of life and meaningful content, or I could have done what I ended up doing, and that's just moving on and finding another gacha game that I enjoy more, which for me personally is Honkai Star Rail. I think it's just way too much having to balance out real life, scenarios, real life personal issues, all of this kind of stuff, balancing out a proper life and at the same time playing more than one or two gacha games. I'm not gonna say that you should quit Genshin Impact or you should quit Honkai Star Rail if you find them even semi-enjoyable, but I think it's time to start finding better priorities when it comes to gacha games. Again, if you want to play multiple gachas, that's up to you, but to say that all of these games are falling off, no gacha game is good, I just don't entirely agree with that. I think it's all subjective at the end of the day, and you should be playing the one or the ones that you enjoy the most. If I genuinely enjoy playing Honkai Star Rail, which I do, then I will play Honkai Star Rail every day and do the daily gacha grind. But if I don't have that same kind of feeling with Zenless Zone Zero, for example, then I'm not going to subject myself to doing that same kind of daily gacha grind for Zenless Zone Zero. If I enjoy the story content of Zenless Zone Zero, I will play the story. But otherwise, I'm not going to do the daily commissions every day, the ending game grind every 2 weeks, just for a game that I only care about when it comes to story, lore, and narrative. That is exactly what I do for most of the gacha games that I play, which substantially decreases the amount of time investment I need to enjoy the fullest of these gacha games, by the way. I think people are just really starting to feel fatigue and burnout from playing so many gacha games. You're playing Genshin, Star Rail, WoW, probably Zenless as well, and it's just a lot. Straight up, I think it's just a lot. Even too much, one would say, right? So one final time, are gacha games falling off? No. I think it's just a combination of exposing yourself to an oversaturation of gacha games and at the same time realizing internally what kind of preferences you actually have. If you're consistently playing Genshin and Star Rail every day for the last 2 years, and you're leaning more and more and more towards Genshin Impact, you're naturally going to subconsciously like Star Rail less and less. You're going to call out more and more trivial issues with the game. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now, 2.5 years after the release of Honkai Star Rail. People are reverting back to Genshin Impact, but they refuse to quit Honkai Star Rail. Again, I'm not forcing you to quit these games or to say you only have to play one or two, but I think it's just not worth it entirely playing a gacha game that you don't find enjoyable. If you think these games are greedy, it's just not worth the hassle. It's not worth the trouble. Again, me finding the lore of Genshin's Teyvat world enjoyable and intriguing is not going to mean that I should have to pull characters and then it matters entirely for me. If I think a character is cool, I'm going to enjoy their time in the story, and after that, I move on. My favorite character in that game is Skirk, but I did not care about pulling on her banner. I'm one of those people now who just pulls on the banner every single time I get a single pull, even if it's for a banner of a character that I do not like at all. But it just doesn't matter, bro. It doesn't matter. So I'll end this one off here. Just listen to my advice, right? Maybe it's time to find priorities with what gacha games you actually play instead of trying to balance them all out and getting burnout for some of these gachas. So I'll end this one off here and I'll see y'all. Goodbye.